The consumer carbon tax no longer, and that's in most of Canada. Today is Tariff Day. Some people are calling Liberation Day. I don't know what's going on with that. But election 2025, lots and lots and lots in the election. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. On the phone with me, all the way from Ottawa, our nation's capital, Ian Burns, our managing editor. Traffic flowing nicely here in the central Okanagan, and weather looking not bad. How is Ian this morning?
I'm still sick, and Ottawa is still sick by the looks of things. It's very cold and pretty grey, so
How
we're still in the winter here.
keeping everybody up to date on the reality TV show in your car that died on the side of the road? Where's that at?
Um, the turbo has been destroyed, the engine is also dead, and I'm now waiting for the manufacturer to get back and say whether or not they're going to replace the engine on their faulty equipment.
And then they said to you that they'll replace, maybe possibly replace the engine, but you still got to fix the turbo, which is $8,000. So just like really, like holy cow, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, and I know you're gonna hate this and disagree, but I just don't like cars. I'm sorry. I know in a lot of people's minds that makes me like less than human, but
Mm.
I really, really do not like cars. I wish that we just stuck with horses.
There you go. And well, I mean, it seems odd, you know, and they also gave you an auction price for your car, which is what is it? What's the year of that car?
2016.
2016 Kia Sorento,
That's right, yeah.
and you paid
125,000 kilometers. Pretty,
and you
pretty all
paid
right.
you paid 25 grand for it, and they offered you 500 bucks for it.
Yeah. Which is a little bit silly. I mean, I might as well break into the lot and steal the catalytic converter, and I'll get more than that for it, probably.
There you go. Well, let's get into it though. So the first thing to start off with Daniel Smith and saying after years of relentless pressure from Pierre Poilievre and provincial conservative governments across the country, the Liberal NDP coalition finally scrapped the punishing and I'd say the compounding carbon tax, which made our economy poor. So starting today, she said you'll save 17.6 cents a liter. So she's celebrating it as a conservative win. So was John Rustad. Pierre doesn't really come out and say much about it. But here is, we got a clip to play from a Liberal MP, though. There you go. Let's play this Liberal MP clip.
It's a big day today. It's the first day that we see that the carbon tax has been canceled. So if you watched yesterday, it was 154 to fill your tank, and today we're at 134.9 to fill your tank, which makes a big difference in your pockets. So we're happy to see that Mark Carney's team is moving forward with cutting the carbon tax for consumers. And we will, of course, continue to roll out what else we'll be doing for Canadians during this election.
There you go. There's Mona. She's wrapped herself up in some Hudson Bay gloves, too, at the end of the Hudson Bay, as well as we know it, and telling you what a great thing that the Liberals have done, getting rid of the compounding carbon tax. But let's play, before we talk about it, let's play this clip from Stephen Gibault, though, another Liberal MP, the guy that actually was one of the architects for this carbon tax.
Do anything you don't want to put measures to fight climate change, and the planet and Canada can go to hell in a handbasket. He doesn't care. But if you're serious about fighting climate change, this is not the only way, but the best way of doing it. It should be the number one tool in your toolbox of fighting climate change.
So there you go. The best tool in the toolbox was scrapped yesterday. And Liberal MPs coming out and making it sound like that it was a victory for the Carney's Liberals have scrapped it. But Stephen Gibault, not so happy. Well, this is a prior clip, though, to be fair.
I feel like I just have to say once again, I mean, basically we have to say this every single day, don't we? I mean, I don't know, how else can I say it? Just say it very slowly and clearly. There is nothing Canada can do to change the amount of global emissions in a significant way that are released into the world's atmosphere. There is nothing that Canada can do. Canada can cease to exist. It wouldn't really make a difference. Why on earth are senior government officials saying things like that as if it's true? Why is he saying this is the best way to fight climate change and protect Canada? that is just false. Where's the fact checker? What's Vasi doing? Why is Vasi not fact checking? I've grown so tired of hearing that. It's just so boring. It's so obviously false and stupid, and it's starting to infect my mind now. That it's just infuriating me. As for the other thing, the Liberals claiming this, in a way, you say Pierre's not really mentioned much of it. Yeah, well, that's to his discredit, isn't it, really? Because the Liberals, the Liberal Party, which was until recently was basically a corpse lying in the street that you could go up and kick it in the head and it wouldn't move. Now the Liberal Party is like all guns blazing, and it's outdoing Pierre Poilievre in just politics, just pure old-fashioned politics. They're proving themselves to be better than Pierre Poilievre at politics. It's completely humiliating for the Conservatives, I think, because they've managed to pretend that this is like a gift from the Liberal Party, when the reality is that they had to be dragged through the mud, kicking and screaming, right till the very last second they held on to this. And then finally they relinquished it because they were all going to lose their jobs. And now they're pretending that they did it. It's like look at this great beneficence. Like, here you go, Canadians, here's cheaper gas. I mean, to be outmaneuvered by people like that, I think should be something that Pierre Poilievre is extremely embarrassed about. But
And
it's
these
happened.
and these are the same people that said Canada was a post-nationalist state and didn't even want to celebrate like Canada Day. And now here she is, all draped in even the mittens, the Canada Day mittens, like from Hudson Bay. It's just, yeah, you can't even make this stuff up.
Yeah, but look, they've got away with it though. And they are getting away with it. People are happy about this, and I think there's an idea in people's minds that this is like Mark Carney, and this is like a new era, and this is change. People were like starving for change, and now like Mark Carney apparently represents that, even though he's been a pretty fundamental part of the Trudeau government for a number of years.
Yeah.
And
Well, we're gonna.
and speaking of Trudeau, who's ever thinking about that guy? He's just gone. He's just disappeared from the face of the
He's
earth.
kind of. He's
He's not
kind of.
even being mentioned.
He's kind of been Joe Biden, right? They didn't want him on the campaign trail because they don't. They don't want to hear from him because usually, even in this regard, they would actually have him out there stumping for a couple of the MPs, but they're just basically. I guess the message is he's too toxic to be out there.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, what makes that so amusing is that you have Jean Chrétien wobbling around and chatting to the press and doing all
Yeah.
sorts of things because he's a former prime minister that people quite like. But then Trudeau is just like locked in some sort of safe room somewhere, isn't he?
He's locked up with Joe Biden still.
But yeah, I mean, this is if Pierre Poilievre has got a lot on his plate right now, but if he doesn't sort this one out, if he doesn't fix this problem, which is kind of like a spear in his side here, then it's all going to add up and it's all going to sink him because this is his achievement. Like he was actually an extremely good opposition leader in terms of what your objectives might be as an opposition leader of any party. He did really well. Like his opposite number, whose job it was for him to scrutinize, he scrutinized him so much that he made him leave his job in tears. Like that's an enormous success for an opposition leader. This was like his main campaign point, and he won it.
Yeah.
He got it through. So he was actually very, very successful as an opposition leader. But now that we're into like the real game, the real sort of match is kicked off, and he doesn't really seem to be doing very well. And I just feel he needs to regroup, I think, and he needs to start bragging about things like this.
Yeah, because it was this one, and then plus the capital gains thing that's now being rescinded. Those are two big wins for the Poilievre Conservatives, and like Rustad and Daniel Smith giving Poilievre credit for the axing the tax, the consumer carbon tax, but Poilievre not really going after it. I mean, there you go. But let's turn to tariffs because that's the today's April 2nd, and nobody really knows what the tariffs are going to be. And then all eyes are on Donald Trump as he prepares to hit multiple countries with reciprocal tariffs. And we're just all wondering what it is that's happening.
Yeah, and also then immediately we'll all have to think, what does this mean for the election? Because if I don't know, I mean, either way, Mark Carney has kind of set himself up to benefit, hasn't he? Because if it's negative, it's really bad news, and Canada's brutally targeted, then he just keeps up the same rhetoric that he's been using for months now. And it's like economic war with the United States. We have to go off and do our own thing, elbows up or whatever, easy peasy. But then if Trump also comes out and says, which seems, he's hinted that this might be the case, Donald Trump, because he's been a lot nicer to Canada recently. If he comes out and he says, yeah, we're going to give Canada special treatment of some kind, then Mark Carney can say, and his kind of lieutenants can come out and say, yeah, look how good Mark Carney is. Look what he's got us. Look at this prize. So I mean, he's like it's like a chess game or something where Mark Carney he's got himself in an excellent position, and Polyev again. I mean, I don't mean to beat him up while he's down, but I mean, Polyev has kind of played anti-chess, and he's got himself in a position where it almost doesn't matter what his next move is. He's going to be checkmated. I think he's in a really difficult spot because he chose not to really concentrate on the Trump thing when that's what everybody wanted to talk about and hear about, and now he's kind of late to the game. So Carney can come in and claim good news, or he can also claim bad news in a way and lean into that, and that's kind of one of his strengths. So yeah, I mean, my prediction is that it's not going to be great for Polyev anyway.
Daniel Smith expects key industries to escape the new tariffs, though. According to her, she says like the oil industry will escape the tariffs, and the agricultural industry, and the ones that will get hit will be some of the timber and pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if he did continue to hit oil, I mean, he's already said that he wanted to do it at 10%. If he did do that, then he would prove himself to be quite extravagantly stupid as a president, wouldn't he? Because they just don't have. I mean, not only do they not have an alternative lying around, but they also have an entire system of refineries that are set up to process Western Canadian Select, or the oil sands, the sort of chunky blocks of oil. Like their whole system down there is set up to process that. And the only other source, I mean, there's some of that in Mexico, I think, but the only other place that you can get substantial quantities of that is Venezuela. And obviously that for many reasons that's not on the cards, I don't think. So I mean, it would just be kind of shooting himself in the foot, wouldn't it, if he did that?
And Alaskans back Canada in face of those White House, like the rhetoric with Donald Trump saying that, he's going to annex Canada or take Canada over. And, like they're coming out. Republican Party Representative Chuck Kopp says he doesn't back his president and party leader in his approach to Canada, explaining we can't imagine Alaska without Canada. I mean, it's hard to get to the other parts of the United States if you're going to drive without going through Canada.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite significant though, because this involves Republicans, and
Right.
Republicans so far have been very, very craven and very like scared little schoolgirls when it comes to Donald Trump. They haven't wanted to make a peep, even though the majority of them seem to be very well aware that his economic policies are brain dead, and that tariffing in Canada and talking about annexing Canada is, again, extraordinarily stupid. And basically, nobody in the party wants that to happen. But they've been so cowed by his election win and by his vicious crew of servants that they haven't wanted to kind of put their head above the parapet. But now, yeah, I mean, Alaska, like you say, like because of how reliant they are on Canada, the Alaskans, they can't really afford to play that sort of stupid game. So they are now starting to say things, and it could be the first crack in the edifice of Trump's little cult that he maintains within the Republican Party. So that could be good news for us anyway.
Yeah, we're going to head into the election 2025 coverage. Lots of stuff to talk about in election 2025. We got a little intro here for you. But There you go. We're kicking it off with the Holly Dillon's Blacklock story. And the Liberals losing 3 MPs already. Paul Chang, obviously the one that is most prominent there. And, I watched the thing and it said they knew about this stuff back in January on Paul Chang and they did little about it, right?
I mean, it's absolutely abysmal, isn't it? It's terrible. Clearly, to come out with something as reprehensible as that, you kind of usually there are signs, It's not just out of the blue. You suggest that a Canadian citizen should be handed over to the Chinese Communist Party in exchange for a bounty. Usually, in my experience anyway, that doesn't just spontaneously come out of somebody's mouth. Usually there's signs that they might be a little bit favorable towards the Communist Party. But I mean, what a nightmare that is. But already that's kind of buried, isn't it? Where's that gone as a news story? I think that's probably the most shocking news story in the whole election so far. And it's kind of gone. But and not just that this happened, that is in itself pretty shocking, but it's more to do with the fact that Mark Carney then said, nah, he's all right. He's a good lad. It's like he just said he was going to sell one of your fellow citizens to a hostile foreign power. That's not all right. But Mark Carney said it was. I just feel like that's extraordinary, and I expect we'll hear more of that from the Conservatives at least.
And the other 2 ridings also subjected to, the ones that dropped were subjected to Chinese interference as well.
Yeah, well, they the Chinese, it's done through what is it? It's through some sort of like the workers department or something like that. It's a really obscure department within the Chinese system. They're the ones that go abroad and do stuff like this. And they're like true believers, completely deluded maniacs that completely believe in Maoism and Leninism and all that nonsense. And yeah, they come and they come into communities where Chinese people live. Obviously, they wouldn't try this kind of thing in a place that didn't have many Chinese people. Like they wouldn't try this in Kelowna, I wouldn't expect. But they go to places where they can kind of threaten and influence the sort of population in those ridings.
I think in really densely populated, like Chinese ethnic backgrounds is where they kind of concentrate their efforts because they can actually use influence and threats to kind of like alter the decisions of people in those communities.
And they also threaten their families. So if you come from China as like a lone man or woman or whatever, you come and move to Canada, you're obviously going to still have your family back home, and they threaten to punish them in certain ways. And I think that's, as most people in the business of threatening and blackmailing people understand very well, the best way to get somebody to do something is not to threaten them, but to threaten people that they love. So, I mean, I think it's surprisingly easy actually to sort of get what you want in that situation, and they do. And it is, it's an enormous problem that we face in this country, and it's also in other Western countries.
Yeah, another Holly Dillon Blacklock story. A federally sponsored foundation is offering cash for election coverage. The judges panel is signed to approve over $35,000, and this is led by Margot Goodhand, former Winnipeg Free Press editor, saying that who once urged Liberals to stand up to bullies in the Conservative Party. No bias there. Grants up to $35,000 per journalist will be awarded to support election-focused journalism involving travel that will not have occurred if they didn't have the grant. So there you go. They have about $500,000 to dish out for this. More, and we're going to talk about this later, where they actually asked Carney, because some of the Liberals actually threatened journalists by cutting off their funding if they didn't toe the line better, which is surprising. We're going to play that clip, actually. So there you go.
She, as well, that Margot Goodhand, I don't know if they mentioned in this Blacklock story, because I'm only looking at a little excerpt of it here, but she was also very high up in the Council of Self-Declared Experts that decided whether or not you got taxpayers' money, that enormous taxpayers' largesse, the tax credit for journalists. she decided whether or not you were a legit journalist, even though, as we see here, she'd come out and talked about how great Justin Trudeau was and how he had to be elected at the expense of the conservative bullies. So she was obviously, from the get-go, a completely compromised individual that never should have been within 1,000 miles of something like that.
Yeah, and they've been very selective in who they fund, and then they also, with Bill C-18, put their knee into the throats of independent journalists like ourselves and make sure that we, A, don't get funding, and B, took away our huge audience on Facebook and Meta of over 200,000, and we're still without that audience. While the federal government, Liberals, and the Liberal Party that's campaigning right now is, poised to spend millions of dollars with Meta, the evil empire, according to them. We always saw Facebook
Indeed.
as a symbiotic relationship. Ours, we put the content on there willingly, freely, in exchange for the traffic that it drove to our platform. News outlets all across Canada, including the CBC, have seen their traffic cut in half, and many have seen their revenues cut in half. And many Canadians are reading about like 50% less news because they can't access it. And then that's the logic that the Liberals are saying is the reason that they now pay Meta to put their content up there where news outlets cannot. If that doesn't just blow your mind, I don't know what does.
And I would also even add, like, some people might be thinking, all right, well, who cares about the news? Like, I'll just go on YouTube and see my favorite dude making a video where he talks about Canadian politics or something like that. Just bear in mind that the Liberal Party tried very hard to also extend its regulations into the social media world and to prevent, in effect, they would say, they would disagree with this, but in effect to prevent independent voices on social media too. And if they win another nice big fat majority in this election, don't be surprised if they try to do that again alongside all the rest of it, like criminalizing certain speech online and so on, because they have shown an interest in that, a very, very strong interest. It seems to be a principle that they have. So watch out for that.
There was a lot of talk about them banning X for this election too. You know what I mean? It didn't get a lot of steam, but they wanted that. So they really want to control messaging. That part is very, very clear. They want to control the messaging.
Indeed, because the reality is that they're not too popular when it comes to certain people. Let's just put it that way. There's a hell of a lot of scrutiny, and from certain people who really dislike the Liberal Party, and they really don't like to be scrutinized in that way. They don't like to be spoken about like that. They consider it to be misinformation or foreign influence or whatever. They don't like to be criticized, and they certainly don't like it when it comes from people that they have no control over.
Yeah, so imagine if they win a majority, not only will they not get funded, they'll probably figure out a way to make us go quietly into the night.
That would be their ambition, I think, and then you can get your news from a newly rich CBC with double the funding, or you could get your news from a nice handful of supposedly private news outlets that are actually funded by the federal government.
Yeah, Holly Doan's Blacklock's did a great story on that too. That like the way that it's going right now, and we're going to see it. We're going to actually see it out of their mouths. That it's basically the media that the government supports is basically an arm of the government. NDP taking a shot at Mark Carney and his housing plan there, saying that before taking credit for something that happened 90 years ago, you could start by taking responsibility for the last 9 years. And this is they're coming out and saying they're going to build 500,000 homes and create this new housing entity. And actually the federal government is going to start building homes. And then there's a lot of people putting up some of the pictures of the homes the government have built in the past, and they don't look good. I actually, when I was a young man working in construction, I was part of a project that helped build some government-funded homes, and they were not done to the same standards as the other projects we worked on, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, the NDP here are saying this. Pretty obvious, isn't it, really? What they're trying to highlight here is basically, to put this in other words, they're trying to say you caused the housing crisis. So when are you going to take responsibility for having created this crisis in the first place. But the thing is, again, it's like a failure of politics. It's a failure of the opposition parties, including the NDP, possibly even primarily the NDP, if you wanted to assign blame, since they, propped up the Liberals. But the Liberals are winning the politics. They're getting away with this. They're pulling this off, and it's all based on that chap right there. It's all based on Mark Carney, and it's all based on the illusion that he represents a completely new party almost. It's like the Mark Carney party right now, isn't it?
Right.
And
Same
I think
people though.
it's a failure of politics. The opposition need to they need to break through, and they need to get it into the sort of conversation that this crisis was in many ways created by the Liberal Party.
Yeah, and it's the same people too. They've changed, and it's actually he was part of that. He was the economic advisor for 5 years, right? So he was the run in the economy. You would say is well, it's always the most important thing, but he was advising on the most important thing, and look where we're at.
Absolutely, and not only yeah, I mean, as you say, the nature of this system of government that we have here, the Westminster system, it's not like a dictatorship. It's not kind of like it's not like you just have a king at the center, a president at the center that sort of makes everything happen, like the American system seems to be now. Like ministers are appointed by the prime minister at the prime minister's discretion, and they are really supposed to go off and do work themselves. They have a very important job and quite a lot of independence. And as you said, it's the same ministers. Why would they suddenly have different ideas? I mean,
Now,
that would be very difficult to believe, wouldn't it?
you tell me if Stephen Guilbeault is going to compromise his ideals from what he like from all we've heard from him. Do you think he's going to actually change his stripes?
Yep, indeed. I mean, the guy is, that's possibly something that you could say to his credit. Like he is a very passionate person in what he believes in. Be very hard to imagine that he would drop that his reason for living as far as I'm concerned. That's his raison d'être, as he would put it.
Yeah, so the other thing that they put out a press release this morning, the Liberals saying that Canada's dairy sector, you and I have talked about this a while, is off the table in any negotiations with Trump. So they want to continue to protect that dairy sector there and those tariffs and all that stuff. So that is one of the things that has been caused some grief even in with UK trade relationships.
I mean, that's putting it lightly. In one single sentence, the reason that we do not have a free trade deal with the UK is because of supply management in the dairy sector. That's it. And it seems to me at least sort of 50% of the fury that's coming out of the US is related to this as well. I mean, when you I'm not talking about the absolutely brain dead morons that just squeal nonsense on X or whatever, but I'm talking about the people who are actually using some of their brain power on the American side. A lot of what they complain about is like tariffs on milk and so on, and all like restrictions on how much you can sell into the Canadian market. And they obviously look, if you want free market, if you want to actually do business in a sort of traditionally capitalistic way, supply management is not going to have any sort of space there because it's not free market. It's not capitalistic. It's much more similar to what you see in command economies, like communist countries. It's not compatible with free trade and a free economic system. So I think that's, I think it's the Americans don't have this obsession with milk or anything like that. I think they see this as it's like a kind of an imbalance where the Canadian side is kind of just cheating a little bit, and it really upsets them. It's like the principle rather than the specifics.
Yeah, and so they've basically said they're going to do anything they can to protect the dairy sector, but not as much noise being made about the canola section, because when Scott Moe was asking about, the tariffs with China, that doesn't even get talked about, right? That doesn't even break through the noise, right? There's Saskatchewan, they're left holding the bag, and it's not good. But let's move on to the Canada's beer tax rose again. That's another one that they seem to have that April 1. It's and maybe they think Canadians are fools because on April Fool's Day, they used to, they were supposed to raise the carbon tax, and they've done that for years. And they also raised the liquor tax. And about half of the money on liquor now is tax, right? Taxes make up nearly 46% of the price of beer. The highest in another claim for fame for Canada and the G7, because Chrystia Freeland, longtime listener, likes to claim all these things about the G7. It is now also the highest tax in any G7 country. They can put that next. You put it up on the wall, put it on your whiteboard. Another number one for Canada, highest tax for liquor in the G7.
I mean, it's a bit tragic, really, especially when you think of the cultural importance of particularly beer in in Canadian history, but also in modern Canada. It is a very important thing. I know a lot of people, it's very fashionable to kind of insult beer and all the rest of it, and I'm there for most of that, but still, you can't ignore the cultural importance of particularly beer, but I mean alcohol in general in Canada, and it's just a little bit cheeky. And sorry, just to go back on that about the cultural importance of beer, that's obviously why Mark Carney the other day was pulling pints, wasn't he? He was in a bar. I think he's done it twice now, actually.
Yeah.
And he's come out actually maybe even more than twice. He's come out with like a beer in his hand and all. It's kind of like that should not be something that costs like $12 or whatever. Like that should be like really easily obtained and really cheap. And obviously it isn't. And the reason it isn't is because the tax man comes and pilfers
And
all
just
your money basically when you want to buy one.
And just like the carbon tax, it's an escalator for the Liberals, right? Every year it goes up. And at some point, like what will it be? So Poilievre promises to axe that tax as well. And then lo and behold, maybe they axe and they'll claim that they're another victory for them as they hold up a pint of mead, as they used to call it in the UK, no?
Mead is a different drink, isn't it? It's got some different ingredients in it, I think. But
So,
talking about the UK, I mean, it's really, really tragic over there as well. Like the land of the pub, they charge huge amounts of beer duty as well, and it's like, I just think it's something. It was an area that the governments thought that they could just get their greasy mitts on because it's bad for you, as everybody knows, which is true if you go crazy with it, but it's not really if you're a pretty moderate drinker. I think generally the consensus is that you'll probably be okay. But because of that, just like cigarettes, it's like, all right, people think this is bad. Like let's sort of add massive amounts of sin tax to it, and we'll raise some revenue from it. But I just think I mean, at some point, people surely are gonna get sick of this. They're gonna get sick of having in effect, their freedom curtailed
yeah.
by
So
high prices on something like beer.
again, and during COVID, beer and liquor stores were considered an essential service. But here we are, like it's almost 50% of the cost of beer is taxation. And that industry does about just under 150,000 people in Canada, right? So again, another industry at threat, and you keep raising the price of it. I mean, people look for alternatives, right?
Yeah, and it's like this is another thing we should probably emphasize, or it should be emphasized generally, that this is not like cigarettes. Like cigarettes there's not really much good associated with cigarettes, is there? Whereas beer, that goes back thousands and thousands of years, and it has like a very important cultural and social element to it. Like it's a bit more complex with beer, and I just feel like, yeah, these taxes are just over the top, aren't they? And probably it's worth complaining about.
I'd say that the one thing though is Justin Trudeau, his biggest claim to fame that I can remember, that his biggest accomplishment was, and I think he ran on it, was legalizing marijuana. Again, our friend Sir Elton John says that was the biggest mistake Canada's made, but I don't see that same escalating tax for Mary Jane as there is for beer. Maybe he's trying to make sure that the Mary Jane is more prominent than the beer.
Yeah, or maybe the Liberals are happy for an increased instance of psychosis and all the rest of the things associated with marijuana abuse. Maybe they want that in society for some mysterious reason. I don't know.
Jagmeet Singh obviously now realizes who his real target is, as he was the one that propped up the Liberals for, these these past two governments, and now he's realized that it's to his detriment that his party might get wiped out right now, and so he's pointing out some things that are pretty obvious. And this is his tweet recently. Said, does this look like the headquarters of a $50 billion business under Mark Carney? Most of Brookfield's core operations are registered here in the Bahamas. And then, like some of the Liberals defending this are saying that, oh, well, you would do it too if you're a smart businessman. So, so there you go. Tax evasion is now a smart thing to do, but if you do it, I guess I guarantee it won't be a smart thing to do. There'll be people banging on your
Yeah,
door.
but which prominent political figure made precisely that argument when he came to fame in 2015? Who is it that did it? It's
Yeah.
Donald Trump. He said exactly that. He said, "Yeah, I fiddled my taxes. I did absolutely everything I could. I gave money to Hillary Clinton. I gave money to all these people. I greased the palms. I used every possible mechanism available to try and dodge taxes." And he's saying, I did that because I'm smart. And then he said, I'm going to apply those smarts to the US government and I'm going to help you all. I'm going to help you all out. And he was, decried for that. He was despised for that by like half of the population in the US and probably more than that in Canada. And yet Carney has said exactly the same thing. He said, "Yeah, I did. I used all these instruments and whatnot. Of course we did. That's kind of how it happens. But I know how this works, and I've known for many years, and I'll bring that knowledge to the federal government." It's a perfect echo of what Trump said.
Lots of people saying now that Trump favors, and we'll get into it in a bit here. Trump favors Carney for that reason and a couple other reasons that are even worse. But we'll get to that in a bit here. But we do have, like the CTV. We won't play it again because we played it yesterday too. But and this is what we talked about earlier. CTV said that they knew about it in January and did nothing. And there was 40 human rights organizations. RCMP pressured Carney, still refused to act. And that has to, like something that journalists keep tracking down because they knew about this and they knew about it earlier and they could have mitigated this, but they decided not to because I think for them it's Liberal Party at all costs and even the proroguing of government. What was that? What was the purpose of doing that other than Liberal Party first, not Canada first, Liberal Party first? And this is what we continue to see is Liberal Party first.
Well, we're seeing them kind of act. They're putting on a very friendly face in public, but if you just actually look at what's happened, it's very sort of Machiavellian, isn't it? It's a bit like Game of Thrones, I suppose I'd say, that would be the popular reference, because they're just doing what they need to do to get power, really, aren't they? And we've seen that with Mark Carney's seat, where they just conveniently turfed somebody that had been an MP for like 15 years. We saw that with Ruby Dala. It was just like they looked at her and they thought, God, that is awkward. That's inconvenient. Like, just get rid of her. And they got rid of her. No real explanation, no real investigation, no curiosity from the journalists, who are all basically liberals anyway, or at least they want the Liberal Party to win because they don't like Pierre Poilievre. And here we are, it's like, and Mark Carney's, he's still in that honeymoon period. Like, it takes a while, I think, for all of the slime to accumulate on a political figure. Just look at Justin Trudeau. How long did it take for him and his very sort of presence to become a toxic force for the Liberal Party? It took like 9 years or something. Like all of the scandals that he went through, and he survived them, including, he violated the sort of the number one rule for left-wing liberal people, which is he did something that could be considered racist more than once, numerous times. So he breached that sort of racism barrier, and he still survived. So I think if you look at Carney, he's at the very beginning of that journey right now. So he's like immortal, isn't he? It's like it just bounces off him, all this stuff. But it is slime ultimately, and it is accumulating. It's just, at what point is that going to actually affect him? That's the question.
The Toronto Sun with their front page there saying, Mark Carney came out and said that they will not get rid of Bill C-69 and that they will keep the emissions cap. And that is really contradicts kind of like when they were talking about when Jean Chrétien said they're going to build that pipeline. And it doesn't sound like they're going to build any pipelines. But I think the key thing for people to listen to when Mark Carney talks about energy, the question we would ask if we were able to be asking him questions is, what type of energy are you talking about? Because I don't think he's referring to oil and gas. I think he's referring to what we call the minor leaguers, the solar and the wind and stuff like that, as opposed to what we call Canada's superstars. Oil and gas, LNG.
Well, he says, in his own words, he says he wants to make Canada a superpower in both conventional and, I think he says, green energy, or whatever word, renewable energy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's given himself permission to concentrate on the second one there, isn't he? And I'm pretty sure that's what he's going to do, since that's what he's devoted his career to.
Well, it's going to be pretty hard to get anything done without repealing Bill 69, because a lot of companies ain't going to invest. What's not a word? Won't invest if that thing is hanging over their head, because you spend $1.5 billion and then somebody pulls the rug out from underneath you, and those are massive projects to do. This is not like a couple $100,000. This is billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, and I'll just correct you there. Ain't, not only is it a word, but it's an excellent word, and was used by the privately educated, even the aristocracy used that word in the Victorian age in England. It's a very good word.
Well, you go.
And that
Putting it
ain't
back.
no lie.
I'm going to put that back in my vocabulary then, and I'm going to have your
Get it
reference
in
point to
there, for
defend
sure.
it.
Queen Victoria, famously, Queen Victoria used the word ain't quite a lot. It was one of her go-tos.
Well,
So if
here you
anybody
go.
ever tells you that, just
There
tell
you
them to
go.
shut up, I would say. They know
I
nothing
ain't-
about the English language.
I ain't going to remove it from my vocabulary then. There you go.
Excellent.
We got a clip here. We're going to play this here, and this is what I'm talking about when we're hearing that Donald Trump likely wants Carney to win for these reasons. Go ahead and play this clip.
I'm calling it now the What's Next panel. We just want to go around the province, see how people are feeling, and see if there are any other referendum issues that they want us to put on the table.
An idea that might sound familiar.
Albertans have been working for Ottawa for too long. It's time for Ottawa to start working for us.
In 2019, then Premier Jason Kenney launched a 9-person fair deal panel to get Alberta a better deal within Canada. This political scientist says while the two panels might sound similar, they are not.
This seems to be a specific attempt to gin up anti-Ottawa, anti-Liberal attitudes in the aftermath of an election that isn't even over yet.
Smith's panel proposal comes within weeks of her threat of an unprecedented national unity crisis if the next PM doesn't meet her 9 demands within 6 months.
Stoking national unity crises that don't currently exist is certainly something new for the Premier of Alberta and should be worrisome not only for the next Prime Minister but for all Canadians.
I think she's articulating the so far unarticulated sentiments of most Albertans. Easterners just don't get it.
Albertan sentiments will be articulated in the upcoming election. Recent polling puts our province at odds with most of the country, showing Conservatives with 53% support on the prairies versus 36% across the rest of Canada, with Mark Carney leading across Canada as preferred PM with 47%. That support drops down to 29% in our region.
We're fully aware that we have been treated very badly by Laurentian Canada since before we were even provinces. So it's not alienation, it's just there's only so much you can take.
Canadians head to the polls April 28th.
There you go. This thing is gaining some momentum, and it is. A lot of people are now saying that is the reason that Trump wants Carney to win, so he's actually helping Carney win so that he can actually sow this discontent and maybe lure Alberta into making this divisive vote, which would be tragic for Canada. Very, very tragic for Canada. I think it would probably mean the end of Canada if it loses Alberta and then possibly Saskatchewan and then Quebec. Who knows what would happen with Quebec? I mean, that would be the end of the Federation, I think.
It would completely cripple Canada. You can't, especially if you like a country with the geography of Canada's, where it's so important that you can move east-west or west-east. To have like one huge slice just removed from that, it just makes life basically impossible, doesn't it? It's impossible to maintain, and BC would suffer quite seriously there, wouldn't it? Because it would have to go through a foreign country.
A Liberal majority would likely play right into Trump's plans, so which is Canadians have to be very conscious of this. You know what I mean? Like it's just like we're getting played here, and for it to switch like this too, and hopefully there's not a lot of interference going on in that regard. So,
and yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, and it is obviously true, the unity crisis in terms of Alberta and maybe Saskatchewan. But then on the other hand, if the Conservatives were to win, there are many people in Quebec that see that as a golden opportunity to push their independence guff and to sort of say, look, we've got the Conservatives in, and they're not very friendly to Quebec. Like, this is our time now. We have to escape.
Well, I think
So it's kind of like it's trying to hold this sort of this very messy country in a way, trying to hold it together. It's like you give one side something and then the other side sort of pops out. It's kind of like whack-a-mole, isn't it? And Quebec and Alberta are two very big moles, so you have to whack.
Well, I think that the Liberals have to take some responsibility for this, because we spent the last 10 years saying Canada's a post-nationalist state. And, like many cities, I remember Calgary and many cities across Canada didn't even want to celebrate Canada Day.
Yeah, well, they kept the flags down for, what was it, 6 months or something like that, for something that they had completely misunderstood and misinterpreted in Kamloops. So I mean, God, yeah, and that's obviously that's just one instance, isn't it? That the post-nationalist thing was before that, I believe, wasn't it,
Yeah,
from Trudeau?
yeah.
And that was like fundamental to his perception of Canada and what Canada was and how Canada sort of fit into the world.
And then both Carney and Trudeau have said many times that they really like the way the things get done in China, like they like the way their government is. So it's just, they've been definitely, like saying there's some good things about China. We're going to play this clip here, though, by Pierre Poilievre's wife here.
And that I was 17, I had moved out of the house and become 100% financially independent. By the time that I was 19, I left Montreal, moved to Ottawa. I took a student loan, put myself through university, worked full-time at the same time so that I can pay for rent and food. By the time that I was 25, a few months before I met my husband, I was still a single woman, and I had saved enough money, $25,000, to put a down payment on a little townhouse that had 2 bedrooms. Thank you. I had done all that by myself, and that was 2012, 3 years before the Liberal government took office. That was the Canadian promise we had in this country. If you work hard, you get ahead. And that is what we are fighting for, to restore the Canadian promise. So,
there you go. There you go, Anita. They have 2 kids, and that was a time when most Canadians could afford a home. And now, after 10 years, not so much.
I wonder, like, people under a certain age, I wonder what they think. Listen to that. They probably think that she's lying, don't they? They probably think, oh, that's bollocks. There's no way that's true. And yet, it's completely true. Like, that was, she even maybe over-egged it there, where she's like, if you work hard. I would sort of counter and say, not really. I think not so long ago, you didn't even have to work particularly hard. You just had to sort of, arrive on time at work and sort of do the sort of basics that would be expected of you, and the sort of, the Red Sea would part for you. You would get the house, you'd get a car, like it would all sort of fall into place. But that is not true now, and it just so happens, since we're in an election, that that's not true after 10 years of Liberal rule. So I mean, again, no, this is like, how on earth is Mark Carney managing to bury all this? Because this is kind of was in the background of what sank Justin Trudeau, is that living standards had just absolutely collapsed in this country, particularly for people under a certain age. And yet now Mark Carney is at the pedestal, and somehow he's like, it's like that never happened, and he's gonna rescue us from his own party's creation.
Yeah, so they've got 2 children. They were married in 2017. She's a Venezuelan immigrant, and she's quite a public speaker, and she's also fluent in Spanish, French, and English. Not too bad. I'm having a tough time just with English sometimes.
No, you ain't.
There you go. Yeah, I've heard her speak a few times. And then and this plagiarism thing, and this is an interesting clip we're going to play. Very interesting. Listen to this very carefully, and we'll talk about it after.
Post published a piece revealing 10 instances of plagiarism in your doctoral thesis. Your party responded by attacking the academic who was quoted in the piece. Some of your surrogates mentioned pulling media subsidies because they didn't like the piece. First of all, Did you plagiarize? And is this a demeanor we can expect from a Carney government? Will you attack the media when you don't like the work we do?
Thank you for your question. I'm pleased that there's such interest in my doctoral thesis. It's sort of languished on the shelf for over 3 decades. I think what you'll find in the middle of that piece is a very clear refutation of these, quote, allegations by senior-most academic at Oxford, Dr. Meyer, who was categorical in her rejection of many of the conclusions that you just made. So if your question is, does a professor at Oxford, well, I think the statement of Dr. Meyer stands is pretty obvious where it is, and as I say, I'm pleased that there is intense interest in a game theory thesis of 30-something years ago.
Next question.
So there's also a lot out there saying that Mark Carney is plagiarizing Pierre Poilievre's speeches too, and then they play them side by side, and it shows. And I would say that that's part of his winning strategy. He's taken some of Poilievre's strategies that appeal to Canadians, and he's at least saying he's going to do them. And then same thing in is languaging, like Canada strong, Canada first, and all that stuff. But one of the most interesting things in there is that some people in the Liberal Party actually threatening media with removing subsidies. Like that's what's hanging on media's head right now.
Yeah, exactly. And as we said, you don't get something for nothing. I can't remember what song that's from, but I mean, that's just an obvious fact of life. It's a fact of the species. And so all of these media organizations that took the coin, now they have to pay for it. They're expected to perform a service, and that's why it's a bad idea in a nutshell. But I would say, just to go back to his plagiarism accusations there, I mean, talk about Oxford University and all the rest of it and these great academics. In that sort of spirit, I would say immediately he's guilty of 2 sort of fallacies, or at least one fallacy, which is appeal to authority. So rather than answer the question, rather than refute it in any kind of factual way, he just made an appeal to authority, and he just said something along the lines of the top professor at Oxford. Okay, I don't care if he's the top professor at Oxford. It doesn't mean he's right, does it? For God's sake, that's the most basic fallacy you could ever commit. It's appeal to authority. I would recommend people Google it. And then the other thing he's guilty of is a non sequitur, where he just came out and said, "Oh, I'm glad people are so interested in my doctoral thesis." Again, that's not the question. I mean, Mark Carney, evidently he's a smart guy, but he seems to take a lot of people for fools if he thinks that he can give an answer like that and have any credibility whatsoever with a serious person.
Yeah, and I think that's been the game plan for the Liberals over the past 10 years, is just basically assume that Canadians won't ask hard questions. And the media has not been asking hard questions for exactly that point that reporter raised, threatening to remove subsidies, threatening to axe the CBC. You know what I mean? All these threats, and then actually saying that part out loud, the quiet part out loud, by saying, like, watch what you say, or you're going to lose lose your ability to function. For us, they just want us to go away. By they don't just threaten us; they take away our audience, right?
Yeah, well, they did that a long time ago, I guess, didn't they?
There you go.
But yeah, it's sad to think that that's the level that Carney thinks that the average Canadian is at. That they'll swallow what he just said there, because that was not intellectually acceptable, if I can put it that way. That's not what I would. Well, I actually happen to know quite a lot of people that went to Oxford University, and it is what I would expect from them, because they're very overhyped in general, I think, as a group of people. But I mean, it's not what you'd expect from a smart fella, is it? You wouldn't expect that kind of response, which is, that's at the intellectual level of high school or something like that, as a response. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, it's very disingenuous. It doesn't answer the questions, and it just continues along that same trend where he doesn't want to answer questions, and he kind of goes around in circles, right? And there you go. We got another tweet here saying that Canada hitting the highest rate in 58 years for Canadians leaving Canada. There you go. And I just checked it with ChatGPT, and it says, yeah, people are leaving Canada, and likely due a lot to do with frustration.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would like to look at the data. Yeah, I mean, are these Canadian born, or are these immigrants who've obtained citizenship or what,
Yes.
permanent residence? I mean, hard one.
We can dig into that a little bit, but there's some sources here when I was looking on ChatGPT too as well. A little bit of local stuff. WestJet stops flying Kelowna to Seattle, shuts down the Kelowna Vegas service early, and that's in response to people cutting some of their travel and supporting more supporting Canada, and also the dollar. Definitely not very conducive to travel into the United States, right? But Porter Airlines starting a new service in Kelowna, Toronto. That's good news. There you go. Some good news, bad news.
That is good news. I'm quite surprised that there aren't more domestic flights to Kelowna. It's pretty annoying that you have to go to Calgary or Vancouver usually.
And we're going to talk about this. We're going to bookend this one. Cory Booker breaks record for the longest Senate speech. I think he was up there for over 24 hours.
Do you think we could beat him now?
Yeah, you think you and I could go for 24 hours?
Well, they're not allowed to go to the toilet or anything. They can't eat unless they've got some food on the desk in front of them or something like that. So they're completely, it's completely raw. They don't have any. There's no help, and I don't think they would accept if you brought a toilet with you, like a little potty.
Well, you could probably do that. You could probably do the fighter pilot thing and put that little bag tied into your thigh. Lots of people do that in concerts. Actually, a lot of females and males do that. They put that because they don't want to lose their spot at a concert, so they use that flight bag, and then they can urinate in it as they're enjoying the music. So I'm sure he might have had that because it's tough to go 24 hours without going to the washroom, right?
Well, I think the key in the past, people that have done this, like Ted Cruz did it, didn't he? Not for that long, for like 21 hours or something. But I think the key is like they sort of adopt a monkish approach to life and consumption, and they just don't have anything for like a day in advance of when they're going to do it. But I mean, in this case, I mentioned Ted Cruz there, and obviously the guy whose record he's beaten. In both those cases, they were doing something called a filibuster, which is where you just because of the way that the system, the way the system's created, you can just keep speaking and speaking and speaking, and it just kills. You can't get the bill passed anymore. But he wasn't doing that, Cory Booker. He was just doing it to attack Donald Trump, I think. So, in other words, and another way to sort of phrase that is he did it to attract attention to himself.
Yeah. Let's move on to markets. Gold, hanging in that mark there, well over the $3,000 mark, and trying to move higher. And again, geopolitical stuff keeps that gold kind of churning in there. Crypto looking like it wants to go. We've been talking about that since that $80,000 mark there. So it looks like it's slowly gaining some ground there, the $86,000 mark. And the Canadian dollar definitely looking for results from an election right here. The tariff thing, see what happens. Like I'm sure as the day wears on, we'll find out what is going to get tariffed, what is not going to get tariffed. And we'll see if this plays out where it is Trump actually trying to make it look like Carney should win this election, or what goes on here. Because he's definitely taken a different tack with Canada since Trudeau's gone.
Yeah, there's been no Governor Carney, has there? Not yet.
Maybe he's got that plum in his focus there. In our AI and tech segment, Apple works on an AI wellness coach. God knows we all need a wellness coach, right? There you go. Apple's reporting developing an AI-powered health assistant, part of a project called Project Mulberry. And that should come with the launch of iOS 19.4, earliest spring or summer. There you go. Don't worry about going to the gym. Apple's got the solution. It's all good.
Well, they've got a lot of proving to do, haven't they, when it comes to AI? They've been pretty quiet so far. So maybe this will be their breakout.
Apple definitely in the back seat there. Ever since the passing of Steve Jobs, Apple has not been that innovative. Like there's nothing really new that I can think of that is that game-changing with Steve Jobs to bring stuff out that was revolutionary, right? The iPhone, definitely one of the most important devices in our modern generation here. That the iPhone changed the world. I think 2008, right?
Yeah, I would say off the top of my head, they've tried a lot of things, haven't they? Like they tried that the glasses thing. That didn't seem to really work. But I would say the AirBuds, whatever, that's probably the most successful thing that they've had since the iPhone.
Yeah, but that's pretty Mickey Mouse when you consider what the iPhone did to so many industries. The earbuds really didn't change anything, right? But the iPhone changed so many industries all at once.
Yeah.
This one here, we're going to show you next, is likely going to have even a bigger impact as this thing starts to roll out. We're going to play this clip here. So that's, I don't know if you can hear me. The one on the left is like generation 1, and this is where we're at right now. You look at the movements a lot smoother and faster. We're starting to see this from many things. Like this is Optimus, a Tesla product. Figure 1 or Figure 3, then they showed a demo the other day too, and that's just pretty impressive. Boston Dynamics also doing their stuff. That's good, Rommel. Lots of that stuff. These things, according to this thing, Elon Musk, everybody loves to hate, that will be a legion, and anybody that studied Roman history there will recognize what a legion is. There'll be a legion of these by the end of the year, and then the legion will start building its own legions.
And they'll all be loyal to Caesar Musk.
Oh, there you go. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about EVs. Again, a lot of talk about the demise of Tesla in EV space there, and saying that's going to, I actually had a discussion with one of our reporters and say that, Tesla is basically dying. And I'm just like, well, here you go. Tesla Model Y becomes bestseller in China for March 2025. Tesla Model Y dominating Chinese. And so the reason that the numbers have dropped off for Tesla is because they engineered their lines to launch the new Model Y. And they did that in all factories at once, all 4 of their factories. They did it all at once. And so their best-selling car was not being sold for the last month and a half because they were retooling their lines. And so now this car is launched, so it's now the #1 selling car in China. And then our next clip here, it is now the #1 selling car in Norway. And as it starts to roll out everywhere, you'll see that this thing, and full disclosure, I have one of the first ones in Canada. I did buy the Model Y, the new Model Y. And I find it amazing. I put a sticker on it, though. I put the sticker on it that says, I bought this before Elon went crazy. No. I bought it just there.
Oh, you could just put a swastika on it, and then people would think that it already
it's already been tagged, so they can leave it alone.
Already tagged, yeah.
That's what people do with their buildings, for graffiti artists. They just tag it first, and then the guy's like, "Oh, that's already been tagged," right? So there you go.
Yeah.
We got a meme at the end here that'll kind of talk to what Ian just said there. So there you go. And this is our fun section. This is just fun. You got to remember that this is just us having a little bit of laugh, right? This is a different kind of news than most, right? We're trying to level of fun, and we also try to communicate with people in there. Yeah, like someone said, like burning Teslas is not pollution. Yeah, so it seems like the left love Teslas now all of a sudden, but a lot of them are starting to get caught and picked up and do stupid things and win stupid prizes like jail. So there you go. People have to remember that one thing about Teslas is they record all your stupid actions. Like they got your picture, which is they got 8 cameras surrounding the car, so they got you on all sides as you're doing your graffiti. So you're going to be a recognized artist. How's that? And again, this is just fun. Somebody put this meme up there, and we're more than willing to share other memes. Deer tick, dog tick. Make what you want of that. There you go.
Maybe he just loves the moon. There's nothing deeper there to identify.
Yeah, just a moon tick. There you go. And then this one I thought was funny as well. Imagine being mad at 2 guys who don't take a salary for exposing people who steal your hard-earned money while taking a salary. Another one that is just for makes you think, right? There you go. And then the last one. Oh no, there's 2 more, right? And this is your friend Cory Booker.
Yeah, he's got pretty crazy eyes, hasn't he?
That's right. So he must have been jacked up on something to stay out there for 24 hours just talking endlessly, right? And then this is the last one. This is the full circle where you talked about it. Don't get offended. It's just a joke, right?
Yeah. Well, that's been true That's been true for a while. I've pity the poor Nazi there, trying to trying to actually trying to have an argument and say like, no, I actually am racist. It's like everybody gets called racist now. How do they stand out? Oh, I guess the question would be, would they want to? Maybe they like this in their
I think,
devious Nazi ways.
I mean, my point of putting that up is there's some terms that are overused, right? Like, like they just seem to just want to label people with everything. And, like anytime you get mad at somebody, you pull out that word, which is, and in my mind, I have some Jewish heritage. It's disrespectful, right, to the people that suffered, like 6 million people that died. All of a sudden you just turn out that word and just start to use it for your own benefit and start to slag people and slur them with a word that actually, when 6 million people suffered the fate of Nazi Germany. And I think it's just ridiculous to be painting that word on people with little care for what really went on. And it's something that should be respected as well, like the suffering that has happened, and then just like throwing it out there as a normal hate word that you can just paint on people. And I thought the Liberals were supposed to be the party of freedom of expression and love. And they're the ones that are doing most of the shrieking and screaming and painting and labeling and stuff like that. It's just gone too far.
Yeah. Well, it's also it's very important to be accurate as well. And I don't think it's a new thing, this abuse of the,
You
the,
probably
the
take that
term
off.
Nazi, but I mean that's
I don't want
very
that, yeah.
geographically specific. It's not only geographically, but it's also historically specific. Nazi, I think a lot of people they do themselves a big favor by actually learning what that means, what that stands for. It means the National German Workers' Socialist Party. That's what Nazi stands for. I mean, how does that apply? It's just, somebody that likes to be as accurate as I possibly can all the time. I mean, it's a little bit foolish, isn't it? And even the Babylon Bee here have been a little bit a little bit ridiculous by using the phrase "actual Nazi." Like, I don't really think there are many actual Nazis. If you talk about like real believers in the German Workers' Party and specifically the sort of that context of 1920s, 1930s Germany, don't think any of those people. There might be like a couple of 110-year-olds knocking around or something that still believe in it, but it's just ridiculous, isn't it? It's just and also the
And
swastika. Like I think we've had enough of the swastika at this point, haven't we? Which is also kind of like, if you want to get into it, that's like a symbol of certain religions, and I'm sure they're sick of it as well. Like the Jains, they must be absolutely sick of seeing that everywhere.
Yeah, and I think some of the words that have been used over the past since COVID, like existential threat, we've heard that how many times, and the Liberals love to use that word. I think Melanie Jolie, just go look at her tweet. She just put that out, another existential threat, and which is now the Bloc Québécois is an existential threat to Canada. Like they've overused that word. Expert is another word that I don't want to hear anymore. Mandate, like love a good mandate. Go read Mark Carney's platform. He's going to mandate the Canadian banks back into net zero. So, after they left.
But what does that tell you? What does that tell you about the health and the strength and vigor of the sort of status quo and liberalism and the Liberal Party in Canada? If every single time they want you to vote for them, they have to use that word existential. They have to make it seem like it's life or death. It's like a constant sort of crisis, isn't it? It's like a perma crisis.
The
And it's
party,
like, oh
yeah,
yeah,
fear.
just this time, lads, you've got to vote for us because it's like otherwise extermination. I mean, that to me tells me that their position is extremely weak, that they
Yeah.
have to keep upping the ante and have to escalate more and more and more and make it like, no, this crisis is real this time, guys. It's like that's kind of, if you put that down into human terms, that's like an abusive
How,
relationship, isn't it?
how,
And it's
how many how many times have they used the phrase "threat to democracy," existential threat, and like all those things, like they and the isms they use. How many isms all the time? Like accusing Canadians of being racist. I don't even know. Like it's just so much of it. Just go look at their tweets. Go look at their tweets and see what they say on a regular basis. Everything is about fear, and it works for some people. They just love to be scared, and there you go.
But that's kind of, when it's a crisis, you have to do something exceptional. That's kind of that's how the Bolshevik Revolution was justified. That's how all these revolutions in history are justified. Any
Yeah.
dramatic moment, it's always like this is life or death, this is crazy crisis, you've got to do something nuts right now.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party, for however many years now, has been saying that, but then the nuts thing you have to do is vote for them. It's kind of like, it's just, I mean, it's abusing the whole concept of a crisis, really, isn't it? Just to extend their time in power, one might argue. A cynic might argue.
Abuse of power and privilege, again, the Emergencies Powers Act. And then just recently here in British Columbia with Bill Eby trying to float the Bill 7 to take, power, like, again, unusual powers for the next 2 years so that he can, fight this existential threat that is, they just don't know how to govern. They have no ideas. And I would say, like, all the ideas that are coming out from Pierre Poilievre's camp. They're ideas, and some of them are being taken by the Liberals. But I would say the BC NDP and the Liberal Party are not the party of ideas.
Yeah, well, the change that we've seen in policy terms in the last few months or whatever, it's basically all been conservative, hasn't it?
Right.
Except it's been implemented by the Liberal Party. And that's the biggest change of all, which is gas prices down by sort of 15 to 17 cents or whatever. That's a conservative policy. That's a conservative idea, isn't it?
Yeah, a huge win. And then that's our show for today, though. We do thank you for watching Now Media, and we hope that you subscribe, share this with some friends, increase our audience, as that would be great. And we're going to try and increase our coverage as we move through this election. We're going to be here on election night too. We're going to have a full team here doing the election coverage on April 28th. And we're talking about doing a lot more stuff too. So even the platform review, we'll be doing that. So again, like, subscribe, share this, and we thank you to all the regulars that are here all the time that are actually commenting. We really appreciate that. And you can continue to support us, and we'll continue to dialogue with you. We definitely don't want to just speak at you. And I'm Jim Check with Now Media, and Ian Burns. We thank you for watching our show here on Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.